Looks like Moshe's reliable line froze.
I was wondering if that was my end or hit or
I think it's his.
yeah, everybody else is moving.
Yes.
Do we have a chat?
Mine's frozen.
Is there a chat where we could tell Moshe that this is happening? Oh, there is a chat. Okay, but how do I use it?
I'll let him know.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I'm telling it right now.
David Finger, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, but your face is not moving. I can hear you though.
I wasn't moving. I'm moving now.
Now
You're moving. Okay, now you're good.
Okay, so let's talk about this mysterious phrase. In the image of God created he him. Btselem Elohim Bara oto in Hebrew. Okay. And this phrase comes from the story of creation, Genesis 1:26-27. And God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth. I love this word, that creepeth over the earth, upon the earth. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him, male and female created he them. So there is the male and female created he them. That's a whole other story that we can talk about, because most of us think of Eve created from rib, but let's ignore that for now. But this pairs of verses mentions 4 times in our image, after our likeness, in his own image, in the image of God created he him. 4 times it tells us that man was created in the image of God. And so commentators over the ages try to explain what does it mean. So we're going to start with Rashi, one of the first systemic interpreter of the Bible, 11th century. And Rashi likes usually to give simple explanation, the pshat, the simplest explanation, and he just translates. He explains to you that the image of what prepared for him was the image of the likeness of his creator. Now this explains nothing, because one of the principles of Judaism expressed by Maimonedes is "En lo demut haguf ve'eino guf." He has no image of a body and no body. This is one of the major principles. In fact, if you go through the Bible, there is this battle between Judaism and paganism where they had images of their gods.
Moshe, do you want interruptions or questions or not?
So I think the best is, because there are several people here, if people to mute themselves, and we can try just, if you have a question, unmute yourself and ask a question.
Okay, so I unmuted myself, and my question is about the difference between the word dmut and tselem. So you say 4 times, but 3 times it's a variation of tselem, right? It's a form of tselem, and 1 time it's dmut.
So the right word, we're coming to it, in fact, in the next thing. Maimonides, since you said God, there's no image. Dmut is again image, but the word does matter. So Maimonides says no. What it means, what is the image of God? Intelligence, binah. And Maimonides explained there is a difference between To'ar, which is a physical image, and Dmut is also maybe a physical image, and Tselem, which Maimonides said was a spiritual image. But I'm a bit skeptical of this explanation. First of all, in modern Hebrew today, we say Tzilum is a photograph, which is a physical image. But also in the Bible, when you talk about the word Tselem, very often refers to a physical image of pagan god, Tzlamim. I mean, this is part of the biblical fight between Judaism and paganism, was the fact that paganism have these images of gods. So Nachmanides, who just comes a bit later after Maimonides, he also didn't like this Torah, the difference between its physical image and spiritual image. So he come with a totally different explanation. What does the image of God? God gave man a soul. Okay. So what is a soul? So we can go to the font of all knowledge, Wikipedia. And Wikipedia said the soul is the immaterial essence of a human being, that which confers individuality and humanity. So this is the soul. But the concept of a soul in Judaism is a bit problematic. So let's go back to the soul in Judaism. So the word that we typically use for the soul is neshama. And this we can go back to Genesis 2:7. And again, it's the second story of creation. And the Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostril the breath of life. And man became a living soul. And the Hebrew for this, ויפח באפיו נשמת חיים, ויהי האדם לנפש חיה. So the Hebrew is for soul is neshama, something that breathes. So in the biblical word, neshama is something that breathes. Even when the Bible goes and says, "Lo techayeh kol neshama," you should not leave any living thing. So neshama is not it's not really this immaterial essence of human being, that which confers the value to humanity. Neshama is really life, something that lives, because most of the time we associate life with breathing. Now, Wikipedia also said that the soul is often considered to survive the death of the body. Now, is this survival of the soul, is this a Jewish idea? So you can go and search for, again, we can go again to Maimonides. We can go at the principles of Judaism, and there's absolutely nothing there about some soul that survives the body. You know, there is a reward and punishment, but it's just reward and punishment. I believe by complete faith that the Creator, blessed be his name, rewards all who keeps his commandments and punishes all those who transgress his commands. Nothing about the soul that somehow survives the body. Even
Martin Kagan here. Isn't it true, though, in at least in later Judaism, that the notion of the soul leaving the body when you die, and when this resurrection occurs, your soul returns to the body?
So let's come back to in a minute. So indeed, the 13th principle, I believe in complete faith, there will be a resurrection of the dead. At the time will be pleasing before the Creator, blessed be his name, and the remembrance of him will be exalted forever and for all eternity. And that comes from the prophet. The prophet talks about resurrection. But the prophet mentions nothing about the soul that transcends the body. So the eternal soul is really a Greek idea that comes back later, come to a later Judaism. Okay, so there is the idea of the soul that departs the body, but actually originally it's a Greek idea. So somehow to, again, interpret that Btselem Elohim Bara Oto means that he gave him a soul, that's a bit, to me, it's a bit of a stretch. So I want to jump to a much later 19th century explanation from Rabbi Meir Simcha Cohen of Dvinsk. And he came up with another philosophical idea, what is the image of God? Free choice. And he said free choice without a forcing nature, but from the free will and intellect. And so this is the idea that humans have moral agency. So, and this is the sense that we have an ability to make moral judgments based on right and wrong, and to be accountable for these judgments. And this idea that we make moral judgments and we're accountable for that, again, this goes back very early. Go the whole story of the Garden of Eden. There was a commandment, and then Adam and Eve violated, and they ate from the fruit of the tree. And then God comes and says, "Hast thou eaten of the tree, whereof I commanded thee that thou shouldst not eat?" So the whole concept of crime and punishment, which is a big theme already we have in the book of Genesis, is based on the idea that men and women have moral agency and they make moral choices and they are accountable for these choices. So this is the explanation offered by Meir Simcha Cohen of Dvinsk, So the answer is, what is the image of God? Free choice. But let's talk about free choice. So March 30, 1981, John Hinckley Jr. shoots and wounds President Reagan and 3 others in the entourage. His press secretary was James Brady. He died many years later, almost 25 years later in 2014, and his death was ruled a homicide. So you think that John Hinckley was guilty of murder, of homicide. What was his motivation? He wanted to impress Judy Foster. He wanted to date Judy Foster, and she ignored his approaches, and he thought that would make him date him. So if that looked crazy to you, it is of course a crazy idea, and indeed John Hinckley was found not guilty by reason of insanity. And he's confined to St. Elizabeth Psychiatric Hospital in the suburb of Washington, D.C. And I say confined because he goes once a month. He goes to visit his mother at Williamsburg because he is considered today not dangerous. He gave up on Judy Foster, and today he's not dangerous anymore. So did John Hinckley have free will? Let's get closer to home. Here in Texas, on August 1, 1966, maybe some people here already were living in Texas and remember this horrible incident. Charles Joseph Whitman shoots 49 people from a tower in UT, on the UT campus. He wounded several people, killed 60, including his wife and his mother. He never stood trial because he was shot and killed by the police who came. And later, people found he left a letter, and he said, I've been a victim of many unusual and irrational thoughts. The autopsy discovered a large brain tumor, and there was a commission of inquiry, and it says they cannot conclude anything conclusively, but the tumor conceivably could have contributed to his ability to control his emotions and action. So did John Hinckley have free choice? Did Charles Joseph Whitman, did they have free choice? So today we recognize in criminal justice the concept of the insanity defense. The defendant is not responsible for their action due to an episodic or persistent psychiatric illness. And there are different interpretations of this insanity defense. There is the McNaughton rule, which the defendant know about the right and wrong. And there is another rule, it's called the Durham rule, which is the accused, was the accused in control of his or her own actions? So in other sense, the insanity defense is, I'm not responsible, my brain made me do it. But this is a very strange defense if you think about it. Your brain always makes you do it. Whatever you decide to do, you judge something right and wrong, and your brain makes you do it. So every action we do, I'm giving you now this talk because my brain made me do it. That's why I'm here. That's why you're here. Your brain made you do it. So what is the defense here? So it turns out that the concept of free will is deeply problematic, both philosophically and scientifically. So on one hand, we do have a sense that I can choose to scratch the right ear or the left ear. It was my free choice. On the other hand, science will tell you that the way the world operates is that, and there is a physical theory, and everything can be explained by physics, by physical laws, and all your actions are the result of physical laws, and that's called determinism, scientific determinism. Even if you are at the quantum level where there are probabilistic choices, these probabilistic choices are determined by physics, by quantum mechanics. So if everything is happened deterministically, how are we responsible for our action? Whatever I do, my brain made me do it. What is my brain? Well, my brain is the result of past events, both genetically, which we call nature, and the way I grew up, my history, which is what we call nurture. But whatever my next action depends on everything that happens so far. Where am I responsible for this? Everything I do, my brain made me do it. But where is free will in Judaism? So we find in Pirkei Avot, the saying of our fathers, 3:15, Hakol tzafui v'hareshut netuna. Everything is foreseen, yet freedom of choice is granted. But this leads to a theological problem that philosophers or theologists call the problem of free will, predestination, and foreknowledge. So free will is the future to some extent, even some small extent is what we make of it. We have control over the future. Predestination is, at least some Christian doctrine believe in predestination of what will be. It has been the case that it will be. And in fact, there are some views in physics that the future, the past, and the present are all already in some sense there. And then the doctrine of foreknowledge is what we say in Hebrew, Hakol tzafui. At least there is a deity who infallibly knows the entire future. And the point is that free will, of course, is very problematic with predestination, because if everything is destined, where is my free choice? But even to say it's not, you have a choice, but God knows what you're going to choose, this is very problematic. If God knows that I'm going to kill, did I have a choice? Could I change it? Could I change my choice? So lots of ink in philosophy has been, one can teach a long semester-long course on the philosophical problem of free will. But I will try to summarize here to you in one slide. Philosophers take two approaches. One is called compatibilism. The free will is compatible with determinism. You can take, for example, Arthur Schopenhauer, and he says, man can do what he wills. This is your free choice, your freedom to act on your will. But you cannot will but man cannot will what he wills. And we recognize it, for example, when it comes to, let's say, sexual preference, we understand it's not a matter of choice. It's not a lifestyle, okay? You don't really have a choice very often about your sexual preferences. You may have a choice, but to act or not to act on them. Incompatibilism says no, free will is incompatible with determinism. So we have a choice. Either determinism is false, and there goes a whole bunch of signs, or free will is really an illusion that we have. So this is the philosophy. Where does the science stand? Where science goes more in the direction that free will is an illusion. And I want to tell you about a couple of experiments that suggest that free will may be just an illusion. One is called the toggle experiments. And there is a toggle, there is a switch, and you can toggle it left or right, and you decide to do it. And there is a counter that counts in tens of seconds. And you are asked to notice the time when you made a choice. So you switch left or right. Now it takes a fraction of a second for you to make the action. It takes a fraction of a second from thinking about something to act on it. But you notice the time when you make the action. At the same time, you're connected to an EEG. And we can see a pulse in your brain when you made the decision. And it turns out that you make the decision, there is a pulse in your brain a fraction of a second before you thought you made the decision. So this suggests the decision was made unconsciously, and later on you think you made the decision consciously. This is one experiment. And of course, on every experiment one can debate, but there are many such experiments. Here is my favorite one. In the 1960s, they discovered that there is something called the corpus callosum, which connects the two sides of the brain, synchronize the two sides of the brain. And people that have seizures, very often it's because there is some kind of a feedback loop going haywire. And if you disconnect the corpus callosum, people stop having seizures. So this was suggested as a therapy. And it's called colostomy. You cut the corpus callosum. And now people that anyway we have two brains, but at least right now two brains are talking to each other. You cut them, you have two brains. You know, this is what was the movie, Steve Martin, the man with two brains. You really have two brains, they're not talking to each other. So they can do the following experiments. They put some goggles and they show you two images. And first of all, ask you, what do you see? So we talk, the speech is controlled by the left brain. The left brain is connected to the right eye. So if you ask you, what did you see? You say what you describe the image seen by the right eye. Even though you saw two images, you only talk about the image you see in the right eye. Then they said, okay, take off the goggle, the images are on the wall. Please point at the images that you saw. Now but with both hands. Now, because each eye saw a different image, each hand would point at a different image. You're going to point at two different images. And now they ask you, why are you pointing at two images? Now you think people would say, well, I have no idea. My right hand has gone haywire. I don't know why it's pointing at that image. That's not what happens. People always come up with some explanation of why they pointed at two images. So the theory is the left brain takes all kind of signals. There's a cacophony of signals that we are bombarded with. And the left brain is the editor. And it gives us this unitary illusion that we are actors in a movie and everything is, there's a unitarity of our experience, but it's really just an illusion. So science is skeptical on free will. But even scientists, psychologists are now saying it's a very useful illusion. They've done experiment with students. And first they talk to them about free will. And to some students, they basically say, well, there is some degree of free will. And to other students, they tell, no, there's no free will, it's complete illusion. And then they ask them to make some judgment. They have to like volunteer time to help a classmate. Turns out that if you tell people, no, free will is a complete illusion, they are less altruistic. If they believe that they are doing something out of free choice, they turn to be more altruistic. So if we all believe in determinism, it gives us a choice to do whatever we want because, well, what the heck, we're not really responsible. This is all deterministic. So free will maybe illusion, maybe not. It's a deep problem. So I, again, have a problem with Btselem Elohim Bara Oto, in the image of God created him. The answer is free will, which is so problematic. But if we go back to that phrase, you see that next to the same phrase, we also have another important phrase. Let them have dominion. So that phrase basically describes, first of all, the way humans are created. They are part of the creation. The story of creation describes how God creates a physical world. And man is created as part of physical world, but man is then uplifted above this physical world to get dominions. So humans have a higher place in the created order. So there is something godlike about human. So that story tells us, yes, humans are part of creation, but they are uplifted by God to stand at a higher level. And in fact, later on, after there is the so-called the Noahide commandments, so there are commandments that are universal and apply to all humans, not just to Jews, and one of them is thou shalt not murder. In Genesis 9:6, the verse says, whoso sheddeth a man's blood, by man shall his blood be shed, for the image of God made him man. So the Torah tells us the reason that murder is such a horrible offense is because man is godly. And we have this whole concept of personhood, where there was a debate about, a gorilla was murdering, Harambe the gorilla was murdered or killed in the Cincinnati Zoo. And there's a whole debate about did Harambe have personhood? Because to us, personhood means you are lifted above nature. You are putting in some special place between nature and God. And if we go again to go back to Pirkei Avot, we see that this concept of godliness of man, because he was created in the image of God, gave rise to the concept of human dignity. Here, Rabbi Akiva would also say, beloved is man, for he was created in the image of God. It is a sign of even greater love that he's been made known to him, that he was created in the image. So not only we are created in the image of God, we are told, you have been created in the image of God. You are godly and you must know it. And you find in Pirkei Avot how this concept of human dignity goes. Rabbi Matya, son of Harash, would say, be the first to greet every man. Shammai would say, and receive every man with a pleasant countenance. Remember, Shammai is this very strict rule, you know. We talk about Hillel and Shammai, and Hillel was the more liberal interpreter, Shammai was the very strict interpreter of the laws. But receive every man with a pleasant countenance. Rabbi Eliezer would say, the honor of your fellow should be as precious to you as your own. And the ultimate statement is in Baba Metzia, he who publicly shames his neighbor, it is as though he has shed blood. And partly because if you shame someone, their face become white and you have shed the blood. So the sages took the concept of human dignity very, very seriously. It was a very, very important concept to them. Now I want to take a bit of a detour, and I'm going back to the Central Liturgy in Jewish liturgy, and it is what we call the 18 blessings, or the prayer where you stand, because it is so important. We stand up when you say this prayer, and it has all kind of blessing. It goes from, we start blessing the shield of Abraham. At the end, we talk about peace. And observant Jews say this prayer that goes back to the 2nd century 3 times a day. Because of its centrality, Jews were not happy to quit it when they are done with the 18 blessing. They think this is such a special occasion. I can sneak in some extra prayer. And they've added another one, for example. Oh my God, guard my tongue from evil. And this is a later edition in the 5th century CE. So this is about, again, my tongue from evil is, I should not speak evil of anyone. Again, this is about human dignity. But then there is extra prayer, one more prayer after that, and I'm not sure when this was written. May it be thy will, O Lord of our God and God of our fathers, that the temple be speedily rebuilt in our days, and grant our portion in thy law, and there we will serve thee with awe as in the days of old. So this is very different. We want to go back to the ritual of the temple. So let's talk a little bit about the ritual of the temple. And we find it in the portion called Tetzaveh, in the book of Exodus. So here is the section from this one that talks about the so-called the Choshen. And this is how the high priest should dress. You shall make settings of gold, and 2 chains of pure gold, you will make them attached to the edges after the manner of the cables. You know, place the cables chains upon the setting. You shall make a Choshen of judgment, the work of a master weaver. You shall make it like the work of the ephod of gold, blue, purple, and crimson wool, and twisted fine linen shall you make it. This is the whole style manual here. But how to create splendor? But we could understand that splendor creates awe. In fact, you walk into a synagogue and we don't want it to look like a hovel. We want it to look like a place. We want to recreate some of this splendor. The idea is that splendor creates awe. So this is in Parashat Tetzaveh. Okay, I can live with splendor in the service of awe. But then you go to the next chapter, and then you read, you shall then take all the fat that covers the innards, and the diaphragm with the liver, also the 2 kidneys and the fat that is upon them, and make them go up in smoke upon the altar. But the flesh of the bull, its hide and its dung, you shall burn in fire outside the camp. It is sin offering. I have to tell you, I don't know about you guys, this butchery does not resonate with me. This is not the Judaism I sign up for. Well, not that I exactly sign up for it, but this is not, just doesn't resonate with me. Let's put it this way. Now, there's another mystery about this portion, Parashat Tetzaveh, but I'll come back to it in a minute. But if you go to the previous parasha, which is the Parashat Mishpatim, I like this. You shall not mistreat a stranger, not shall you oppress him, for you are strangers in the land of Egypt. You shall not oppress any widow and orphan. If you oppress him, if he cries out to me, I shall surely hear his cry. This does resonate with me. This is the Judaism I did sign up for. So there is this huge gap between Mishpatim and Tetzaveh.
So, Moshe, can
Yeah.
I interrupt? This is Liwara again.
Yeah.
So, it's not really a contrast between the two parshiot, right? Because Mishpatim has plenty that doesn't resonate with us, including the stuff about slavery, correct? So there's the ritual stuff that particularly grosses us out in Tetzaveh, but in Mishpatim, there's plenty that doesn't resonate with us also because it doesn't reflect our current social values. And really the best way of understanding that in general is that Judaism tried to elevate sort of what the culture was at that time to something better, but there's going to be things that don't resonate. And this is, entirely consistent with what Maimonides says. But
slavery is a whole other issue that we can discuss about slavery in the Torah. So I don't want to go there.
I know. I'm just saying that the distinction between the two parshiot doesn't necessarily. It's not quite as simple. That's all. I'm just going to push back a little bit, but I'm going to stop now. Okay.
Well, let's come back. We'll come back to it.
Okay.
And partly there is something very mysterious about Tetzaveh. So if you look at the Torah after the book of Genesis, and you ask who is the central character in the Torah, there's one very clear central character, my namesake, Moshe. And he is the central character, again, from the beginning of Exodus, almost the very, very beginning, all the way to the end of Deuteronomy. And in fact, the name Moshe was so hallowed. Today it's a very common name. So you can ask, okay, there is this phrase, from Moshe to Moshe, there was no other Moshe. Between Moses, the biblical Moshe, and Maimonides, there was no other Moshe like this. So you can say, okay, who were the other Moshe in between? So you're hard pressed. You can look through the Bible, there's no other Moshe. You can go to the Mishnah, no Moshe. You could go to the Talmud, no Moshe. In fact, you have to go to the 10th century before Jews dare to start reusing the name Moshe as a name. It was such an important name. Now let's go to Parashat Tetzaveh. And there's not a single mention of the name Moshe. So this does suggest that between Mishpatim and Tetzaveh, it's not just does it resonate with Moshe Vardi or not, but they seem to come from very, very different places. So I'm going to make a shocking revelation that may be shocking to some of you, maybe not others, but the Bible is not a coherent document. There are inherent tensions in the Bible. And of course, this is a subject I will mention it here in passing, but one of the tensions in the Bible is the so-called Kohen veNavi, the priest and the prophets. This is a name of an essay by a Jewish European essayist, Echad Ha'am, from the beginning of the 20th century. And in fact, if you think that Moshe Vardi is peculiar, that he doesn't like the sacrifices, let's go to Amos 5:22-24. Though ye offer me burnt offerings and your meat offerings, I will not accept it. Neither will I regard the peace offering of your fat beasts. Take thou away from me the noise of thy songs, for I will not hear the melody of thy viols. But let judgment run down as waters, and righteousness as a mighty stream. So it's not just that Moshe Vardi says, I like Mishpatim, but I don't like Tetzaveh. Amos, the prophet Amos says, me neither, me too. Now, we have the image that, first of all, there was a Torah, and that's given, we can estimate, but this is sometimes towards the end of the second millennium BC. And the prophets come hundreds of years later. But the reality is that, again, if this is the Orthodox version, but if you look at the more historical version, what scholar tells us that actually both parts were written during the First Temple period. So there is a deep tension inside Judaism from the very, very beginning. And so that's why we see this in the Bible, we see this in this different emphasis it was baked into Judaism from the very start. So one tension we saw was Kohen veNavi, a priest and the priest and the prophet. But if you lift it, it's a tension between moral versus rituals. So think of Yom Kippur. You ask people, what is Yom Kippur about? What is the big thing Yom Kippur? People tell you, we daven for many, many hours. We stand in front of God for many hours to beg forgiveness, and we fast. But then we read, Yom Kippur, we read the Torah, and after the Torah, we read the Haftorah, and we read Isaiah. So we typically, many of you may have not read that in English. So you have read it, but you don't actually know what does the prophet say. Let me read to you, not with tropes, but in English with my own emphasis. What does Isaiah say? Is it such a fast that I have chosen? A day for a man to afflict his soul? Is it to bow down his head as a bulrush, and to spread sackcloth and ashes under him? Will thou call this a fast, an acceptable day to the Lord? Is this not the fast that I have chosen? To loose the bands of wickedness, to undo the heavy burdens, and to let the oppressed go free, and that ye break every yoke? Is it not to deal thy bread to the hungry, and thou bring the poor that are cast out to thy house? When thou seest the naked, that thou cover him, and that thou hide not thy veil from thy own flesh? So in the Haftarah, Isaiah tells us, I don't care about your fasting and davening. I care about social justice. This is what we read every Yom Kippur. So there is this, in a halachic analysis, we make a distinction between the commandments, we call them Ben Adam Lechavero, person-to-person commandments, and then person-to-God commandments. Fasting is a person-to-God commandments. We call it Ben Adam Lamakom, between man and God. Now there is a beautiful story that goes back again. We find it in Hillel. So there was a Gentile who came before Hillel and said to him, "Convert me on the condition that you teach me the whole Torah, what I said on one foot." So the same Gentile went to Shammai, and Shammai dismissed him. But Hillel said, "Yes, we can do it." What did he tell him? That which is despicable to you, do not do to your fellow. This is the whole Torah. The rest is commentary. Go and learn it. This is the Jewish version of what's called Kant categorical imperative. The Kant categorical imperative for moral behavior is do unto others as you wish them to do unto you. This is the negative form of it. Do not do unto others what you do not wish done to you. And again, philosophy can go and debate the distinction between the positive and negative formulation. So Hillel tells us, I go with the prophets. Social justice is what Judaism is about. But let's all be honest. It's much easier to get along with God than with other people. God is silent. You can do your ritual. You can feel good about it. Sartre said, hell is other people. I was department chair. Sartre was right. Okay? We all know people were very difficult. Even the book of Genesis tells us how God had a hard time controlling people. He creates them, and then they're out of control all the way from the Garden of Eden and goes on and on and on. So people are difficult. So here is my interpretation of what does it mean, Btselem Elohim Barato, in the image of God created he him. The Torah is not a science book. It's not a philosophy book. It's a book of moral teaching. That's what the Torah is. So when I read in the image of God created he him, it's not about intelligence. It's not about the soul. It's not about free will. It's a moral imperative. And this is my version of the Hillel imperative. Behave as if you and your fellow human beings were godlike. Or to counter Sartre, heaven is other people. which now that we all sit isolated at home, we realize that too. Yes, hell is other people, but also heaven is other people. Now, there is, over the years, Judaism again and again drift into ritual, because ritual is easy. And again, there are movements coming back from this. No, go back to morals, go back to morals. For example, the Musar Movement was a 19th century movement in Lithuania among Orthodox Lithuanian Jews who were not Hasidic. This was a movement in the non-Hasidic part of European Judaism. And the word Musar comes from proverb, and it translated to know wisdom, ladat, chokhmah, and
We lost him.
Excuse me? Musar really probably means a message, instruction. So today we think of Musar as morals, but really literally probably meant something that you have learned from someone else. You pass it on. And the big proponent of the founder of the Musar movement was Rabbi Yisrael Salanter. And he said, just as one checks carefully to make sure his food is kosher, so too should one check to see if his money is earned in a kosher fashion. Again, emphasis on moral behavior. And there is an interesting relevance between the Musar movement and the situation we find ourselves today. Because there was, in 1848, there was a cholera epidemic in Lithuania. And Rabbi Salanter set an example of how people should behave during an epidemic. For example, he said, necessary relief on Shabbat for Jews should be done by Jews and not by Gentiles. He said, it's a mitzvah to provide this relief. Jews should do it even though it is Shabbat. Don't go and get Gentiles to do it. And if you are sick and it's Yom Kippur, do not fast. It's more important that you preserve your life and your health than fasting. He also was actually interesting. He is viewed as a psychologist because he's coming before Freud, and he recognized that people have subconscious motivation. And he said it's important for people to work to understand their subconscious motivations because they will learn to be able to control their actions better. Now, human dignity has implication also outside of Judaism. So let's go back to the Declaration of Independence that has these lofty words. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Let's ignore the hypocrisy of Thomas Jefferson, who is a slave owner, writing these words about all men, where really he meant all white men. But let's look at the words. He said that men are endowed, again, I'll take it, men and women are endowed by the creators with unalienable rights. Where were they endowed? And I would say the only explanation for this is in the image of God created he him. So the concept of human dignity, of the godlike a feature of humanity, has reflection in the law. For example, in 1992, Israel does not have a constitution because they couldn't agree on one. But in March 1992, they passed what they call a fundamental law. And one clause there is human dignity. There can be no violation of the life, body, or dignity of any person. And the same way that John Marshall launched a constitutional revolution in the United States when he essentially put the Supreme Court at the apex of the making political decision in the United States, there was a constitutional revolution in Israel taking this law essentially to be a de facto constitution, and lots of consequences, putting human dignity at the center of the legal system. So when I go back to this concept of human dignity, we say Kevod HaAdam, my conclusion is that this is the most fundamental Jewish principle, human dignity. And I conclude from this that social justice is a Jewish value. It's not a liberal agenda. I can rephrase it. You can take the synagogue out of politics. And in fact, the First Amendment says Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. You can take the synagogue out of politics, but you cannot take the politics out of the synagogue, because social justice is a Jewish value. This is an issue not only for Jews, Christians facing the same issue. Here's an article just from a couple of days ago. The walls of the church could not keep the Trump era out. Even Christian churches have the same issue. They could not keep the politics out of the church. And unfortunately, these days we live in days where we're seeing human dignity violated again and again and again. This is a picture of George Floyd. There are more horrible pictures that I decided not to put in, but here you see the 3 police officers kneeling on him. This is to me a gross violation of human dignity that will end up with him being dead. But you don't have to be so extreme to violate human dignity. This is also, to me, a violation of human dignity. To mock a disabled reporter, this is a gross violation of human dignity. You don't have to kill someone to violate human dignity. And you see that I chose to bring politics in. And I recently posted on Facebook this banner that somebody else wrote. It says, I was asked, you're willing to lose friends over politics? And I said, I'm willing to lose friends over morals. Huge difference. And I think Dave Lippman is attending. We had quite a debate over this. She thought that maybe I shouldn't be so easy to lose friends. And then I said, Debbie, would you friend someone who is a member of the KKK? And you says, okay, you found my red lines. So we all understand there are red lines. Of course, we might differ where we pass the red lines, and this is a subject for a different conversation. So I want to conclude again. Human dignity is the most fundamental Jewish principle for me. It's in the image of God created he, him. That's where it comes from. People are, and I'm a hardcore scientist, but treating people as if they're godlike, that's the foundation to me of morality and ethics. And this is not a liberal agenda. This is a fundamental Jewish value. Thank you very much. Good. We have a few more minutes. So now if people want to ask questions, offer commentary, I think again the numbers are small enough that people can just unmute themselves and burst in. And I will stop sharing now, so we can go back to gallery view and we see everybody. Okay.
So thank you, Moshe. That was beautiful and wonderful. And I agree with nearly everything you said. I just think that there still are problems even with the social moral parts of the Torah. There are still issues that really need to be worked on, because just a few psukim before the ones about the orphan and the widow and all of that are laws about killing somebody who's a sorceress and killing somebody who is an idolater, and things that really don't sit well with us even now. So as much as you can try to reconcile, based on as much as you can try to say that it's the moral part that resonates with you, we still have a problem. So all I'm saying is that I'm not arguing that the distinction you're making isn't true. I'm saying that we have more problems even than you pointed out. And this is coming from somebody who came from a very right-wing Orthodox background, so.
Well, I'll make 2 comments on that. One, you're making a comment on the talk that I did not give. Okay.
Yes, that's true, but the implications, okay, that.
I did not give this talk.
Right, yes.
But I can tell you, you're not the only one that had the problem. For example,
of course.
So-called Ben Sorer Umore, the rebellious son.
Right, yes.
And so already, I think my brother can correct me, Rabbi Akiva, who said it, Ali? Rabbi Akiva, that says that, no, this never happened. It's just a parable, okay?
Right, so, just given for the schar of limud, of learning
so
it.
Even
right.
in rabbinic, not just now,
yes.
In our liberal times, we think that this does not sound too humane. Even 2,000 years ago, people say, no, this is never going to happen, okay? Mm-hmm. Now, this is a digression. I just want to make it very brief. But slavery, even though you can say the Bible condones slavery, it circumscribes slavery.
Yes,
Actually,
it's indentured servitude. Yes, it's indentured servitude.
There is something very important there, which is still relevant today. You say, even though you signed a willing contract, society steps in and says, no, certain contracts are illegal.
Yes.
This is a very, very important legal concept. Two people willingly sign a contract, and society steps in, society, God, society steps in to say, no, this contract that you sign is contravene societal interest, and therefore we declare certain things not to be legal. So when I bought here a house in Bel Air, and the subdivision goes back to I think to the late 40s or early 50s, the deed on the house, on my house, said that I cannot sell the house to, I forgot the precise phrase, but colored people or black people or something like that. And it was really only in the 1960s the society stepped in and says these clauses in the deed are null and void. Okay, but it's still in the deed to my house. It is still there. When we talk about racism, it is still in the deed to my house. So slavery, yes, we have slavery in Mishpatim, but you can look at the other side of it. It circumscribes slavery. And not surprisingly, the law that were written 2,500 years ago don't quite match our today's sensibility.
Right. It's circumscribed except for the children of the wife.
Again, I'm not going to go into a debate about the talk that I did not give. Why don't you give a talk about the parts of the Torah that you don't like? I gave it the part that I don't like.
Okay. Okay, I try to focus more on the parts that I do like, but yes, okay, yes, right. No,
Moshe,
granted.
Moshe, I would like to thank you the way you are doing the classes. I don't know how to translate it, begova enayim. You know, if you can explain it to everyone that we all understand what you're talking about, and it's not above our levels. Thank you. You're doing a great job. Thank you.
Okay. So
yes, thank you, and sorry to bother you, Moshe, but it's always good to have somebody, talking anyway, to ask them questions. But thank you, I really appreciated that. It was a great talk.
So my brother corrected me. Tali, can you say who it was? Unmute yourself and say, wasn't Rabbi Akiva?
אני לא בטוחה.
לא את, יש עוד טלי, נפתלי.
יש פה עוד טלי.
יש נפתלי.
In Sanhedrin, a citation from Sanhedrin tractate.
מי זה אמר? Who said it?
Rabbi Yehuda.
Rabbi Yehuda. Okay. Any other questions or comments?
Thank you, Moshe. Well done.
Okay, in that case, I will thank you all for coming, and I wish you the rest of the day to be safe and be well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Moshe. Thank you.
תודה, זה היה מעניין מאוד, ביי.
Thank you.